Hey everyone, good morning, good evening. Hope you're all are doing fine. Am I audible to all of you? Quick audio check. Yes, no.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Good to know. So welcome all to Radio Automation. So my name is Ashish, and I would be the trainer for the Python Selenium session, which is scheduled for the upcoming batches. So let me start with a brief introduction of myself. So I have pretty much experience of almost 10 to 15 years in this industry. And I've been working with multiple MNCs, multiple big organizations, big names in the industry related to automation. I have experience in multiple items like in performance testing using JMeter and Python automation testing in Java, Selenium, Playwright, whatnot. So the only one and only rule which I follow in this class is that I want the session to be interactive as much as it can be. If anyone has any questions, any issues, let me know. At the same time, interrupt me, ask me as many questions as you can. And the most important rule, do practice. Right. I can see a couple of old names out here. Yeah. So I was out for almost 7 months last time. So I took my last batch midway in October, and now I'm continuing back in April, which is now the end of April. So we can officially say it's May because of some personal reasons. My mother wasn't well. So I'm back now, with the same energy, same enthusiasm which we used to have. Okay, so before I start, can I know if anybody joining from overseas here, or everybody's from the Indian time zone? Yeah, okay. We have a few. Apart from Antariksh, anybody else joining from overseas? Okay, Swati. Got it. So I see a few names are older. Samir, you were there in the previous batches as well, right? Yeah. So before we start now, I would be letting you guys know that we will be taking up Python with Selenium initially. And once we do that, I have my couple of sessions left for APM because my last batch was midway. I need to leave midway because of some personal reasons. So I would be continuing the same. And over there, I'll be taking up some extra classes for understanding how do we deal with mobile automation in terms of APM with Python and APM, with an Android as well as an iOS. So we will be doing it up in the towards the end of the session. Okay. So before we start, I would like to understand from you guys that why, if I will be telling it for sure, but I would like to understand that why Python? What made you guys understand that, okay, let's try Python, or anybody has any previous experience in terms of automation, in terms of automation in any language, uh, or are you guys studying, or how much experience do you carry, like that? Please feel free to unmute yourself and speak. No issues in that at all. That helps me to understand the base so that I can start accordingly. How many of you guys have experience in automation previously? You guys can just give a thumbs up or something. Okay, no issues. I believe we have pretty low audience here who has been working with automation previously. So no issues. We are going to scratch. We're going to start from very scratch, from day one, from very basics in terms of Python, and we will be taking up towards the advanced level slowly and gradually. And yeah, so without wasting a time, I'll say let's get started. Before getting started, if anybody has any questions in their mind that, hey, Ashish, I want to know this, I want to know that, please post your questions. I would be happy to answer. And we can take another questionnaire session towards the end of the demo. Yeah, okay. So let me just start with a very basic set, setup. Allow me a minute. Please let me know once my screen is visible to all of you.
Yes, visible.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's start with the basic demo. The very first question that comes in the mind when we discuss about automation in the industry, in the corporate industry, being an IT engineer, being an automation tester, your clients, if you're working in a service-based organization, if you're working in a product-based organization, the clients over there, the managers, if you will go up and say, hey, I want to automate this XYZ setup, the first question that comes into mind is that, hey, okay, you want to do it, but what programming language are you comfortable with? Or instead, I'll rephrase my question. The question comes as, hey, what programming language would you prefer for this XYZ requirement over here? So you know the project very well, you know the requirements very well. Now you are the decision maker towards you are the, I'll say, a person who will be documenting all the pros and the cons of different languages which you have, and documenting them to and give it to your managers or the decision makers. They'll take up a decision accordingly. But before that, we should be aware the pros and the cons of the language which we want to use according to our preferences, according to our needs, according to our comfortability, according to the confidence level which we can show the client, right? So there, the very first question comes in the mind is, hey, Java is a very common language which has been used for years and years now with different testing frameworks out in the market. Then why do we need Python? Like what Python gives you extra over there? Um, like being I have been asking this question to my juniors a lot of time that why do you want to prefer Python? What is separate there? You can do multiple things which Java can. We can do multiple things which there's no that's a disadvantages in Python, but still we prefer Python nowadays. The very first answer which comes from my junior is, I hope that should come from you guys as well. Why Python, guys? Any random suggestions? I would be happy to see and check. Let's make it a better session instead
I
of
think
me speaking it.
uh,
Go ahead.
uh, I think Python is a very simple and plain English level language, so we don't need to deal with the syntax and all. Whereas in Java, we need to deal with the syntax thing. So that's
Mhm.
the reason Python is being preferred more than Java.
Okay. Yeah, that's
So we don't,
pretty cool. Mhm.
yeah, and also it's in uh, what we have seen is that if we go out and write and we look after the you can say the resumes and the profiles, right? So most of the places we are seeing that okay, people are being preferred for those people who are very well good in the Selenium with Python.
Mhm. Okay. Anyone else wants to say something? That why are you guys? Let me rephrase the question. Forget about testing needs. Let's try to understand what emerged Python in the market. Like when did you started learning? When did you started hearing about Python? Anyone, please unmute yourself and please go ahead. I would be happy to hear you. Do not hesitate.
Ashish, I heard this during my college days, but Python wasn't much of a rage back then. It was mainly Java. But the last 4, 5 years, I've been hearing a lot about Python. Like all the new frameworks are being developed in Python in the industry.
Can we say that we have been hearing about a name called artificial intelligence?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
because of artificial intelligence going so viral in the market, we have started hearing Python, and Python started boiling up, and it boiled up at a point where it, overpowered other programming languages in the market, right? So Python started into our ears when we started hearing about artificial intelligence in the market. Hey, this is AI, this is ML, this is Hadoop, and XYZ in the technologies over there. And all of them are supported with Python well versed completely. So then we see that Python has enough capabilities that they can, develop a complete artificial intelligence, neurons and whatnot. And then why cannot we try it out in the testing industry? Since then, we started, experimenting with Python. Then multiple organizations came up with the support in Python. The very first was Selenium itself. So they came up in support with Python. They launched their own libraries and everything over there in Python. And since then, we started using it. But the basic question comes again back that why do we, what's the difference between using Python as well as Java? So that depends upon the level you are. The first thing which I normally say is if you are a beginner, like I was a couple of years back, if you're a beginner, and I worked very hard with Java in my college days. I remember it used to be a very big book. I don't remember the exact name. It was almost double the different books which I used to study, and figuring out notes over there, creating it head first. Yeah, kind of that itself. It's head first with Java. So from these days to Python, it's a long journey. So let's try to understand that as a beginner in the programming industry, if you want to, excel yourself in the careers, then and I heard multiple students saying, "Hey, Ashish, I know how to, I know the logic, I know okay how it's going to be programmed, but I fail when I write it." That is the very basic and the root cause of the issues which we have in the industry nowadays. They say that I know 2 plus 2 is equals to 4, and I can solve it in my mind. I have the logic itself, but I'm not sure how do I write it out in the paper. How do I present it? How do I write a correct code about it? That is the basic issue which comes here. So in terms of automation, I want to click on this button. I know I want to click on this button. I know the logic that I have the idea and I have everything. But the bottleneck comes, how do I write it? Another example could be that hey, I know that I want to get the list of all these items in the web page, but the bottleneck comes how? So all these things, all these questions are answered when you start learning Python. So the very first thing about Python, which is very known, is that hey, Python is a very simple and easy to learn language. When we say simple and easy to learn, it can be in two ways. The first way, the very first way as an Indian or as anybody else, we see is what is more soothing to eyes, which is more less clumsy, which is more easy to read, and that is why we say simple and easy to learn. Simple and easy to learn, when I say it more means that it's more logic oriented as compared to syntax oriented. If you know how to solve the issue, you would be very easily writing the code to resolve the same as well. The Python is not a language which holds you up on syntax and say that no, you have to do this way in my way. No. If you have it in your mind, start writing it in just simple English language and it will start solving you the issues out there. For example, the very basic and the classic example I would like to see is a hello world example, which we used to start your programming journeys through. You come up with a simple thought that hey, I want to write a hello world program. As I said, that Python is a logic-oriented program. Now, the moment I say you the question here that you want to write a hello world program, you all of you know that okay, you have to just print hello world. But the bottleneck came if I say you that write it in Java, you will come back to me say, Ashish, how should I do it? But when I say in Python, It's a one single line because I know I want to just print it. I have mentioned, hey, print it, and that's it. Right. So that is the beauty. So I read a comment, Shaban Khan. You said I don't know anything about Python, right? So can you compare these two items, the green one and the the pink one? Which one is more better to understand? Clearly the green one, right? And not only you, I would like to understand it from others as well. So as I said, that Python is more logic oriented. You know what to do. You can simply do it. But when you go towards Java, you know you need to write, hello world. But if I just simply write print hello world, will it work? Hell no, it will not work, right? So let's take another example around the same, which is if I want to loop through a list, as I said. Now I have given you a list and I say that, hey, print all the elements in this array and print all these elements in the list. You'll say, okay, Ashish, I can do it. I'll take one element at a time and I'll start printing it. But I don't know how to do it. And like, what is a string? What is a character? What is an integer? I don't know. I don't know how. I'll simply say, okay, I'll give you the list, fruits. This is the list. Just start a loop. We'll discuss about these loops, syntaxes, and all these things in details in the upcoming sessions. But just an example. Again, I can say that Python clearly wins in this example as well. Third, very basic example comes as you have seen multiple databases, multiple areas where you need to read a file and print it out somewhere, and then you need to write something in the file as well back. Now, I used to remember in the CBSE questions in my class 10th, this used to be a question which horrifies me that I need to remember so many good names in C, C++ that that was seriously horrific. That buffer reader, file reader, all these IO exceptions. No, if Python was existing at that point of time, see, with open this file and print this file. That's so simple. But when you compare it to the other programming languages, I don't want to read it out as well. I'm not at all saying that Java is not a good programming language. Java is a very, very good programming language, and it do solves multiple use cases where Python do fails at this point as well. But as a beginner towards the career, as if you want to grow towards the latest in the market, with your experience, you can definitely overpower Java or any other programming languages which are there in the market, right? Any questions anybody have till now? Yes, no, maybe. You
No.
guys have not had your breakfast or dinner for sure, I'm saying. I cannot see any reply from Swati, Shivani, Pooja, Nikhil Bansal, Jaydeep, Balraj. I'm very bad at this. I'll start calling out the names in case if I don't feel so. Yeah, okay, good to know. No questions. All good. Let's come to the next property, which is that Python is an interpreted language. There are two types of languages available. One is interpreting language, and another is, can anybody name it?
Sorry, what's the question?
Yeah, compiler. So there are two types of languages available, interpreting languages and compiled types languages, right? So what is the difference? The difference between an interpreted language and a compile time language is that when you talk about a compile time language, for example, no, it is not linked with the platform for sure. The difference comes where that when you have you worked with C, C++ or okay, go ahead, Pooja, you want to say something?
Yeah, like in interpreted language, it go like line by line, and in compiling, it go like full program will run first, and then it will compile the full program and then interpret them.
Correct, exactly correct. So that let me rephrase the same. So when we say compile type languages, the compile type languages comes as C, C++, Java. When you start coding in these languages, you will see that. Okay, let me give you a live example before I show it to you. We were here. So I have this Python compiler, right? and I have a Java compiler as well opened with me. This is an online compiler. You guys can easily try it out. Here I'm just printing something. I'm printing whatever XY said. Let's say hello guys. Now after this, I'll say that hey, print me 10 divided by 0. I know it's not possible logically, but let's see what happens if I run the code. You see, I get an error. I'll say it says a zero division error. You cannot divide a number by 0. Completely correct. But have you noticed the very first line? The very first line says hello guys, which means that line number 3 was interpreted and executed without any errors. Hence, it was executed and printed me the output, right? Hello guys is clearly printed because line number 3 has no errors into it. When the code moved towards line number 4, the line number 4 got a error saying, hey, zero division error. I cannot divide a number by 0. Let's try another line after this and say after 0. I again run the code. It prints me line number 3 perfectly. Line number 4 gives me an error. Line number 5 did not execute it at all. Why? Because the program stopped executing at line number 4 as it encountered an error then and there. So interpreting language goes and interprets the code line by line, and wherever and whenever it receives an error in whatever line, it stops the execution then and there immediately. And once the execution is stopped, it will not execute the next line and the following code after that. That is what we say is a interpreting language. Another example of an interpreting language is, can anybody tell me? Another example of an interpreting language. You all have heard about it for sure. In school times, graduation times. No, C++ is not a interpreting language. No, not Java as well. No, not PHP as well. No C#, no JavaScript. Have you guys heard about HTML? Hypertext Markup Language. Yes? Yes. HTML is another example of being a interpreting language. Okay. Let's talk about Java here in the same case. That how would be Java reacting if I try to follow the same? Let me just copy paste this long syntax. And here also I would be following the same thing, 10 divided by 0. And let's add line number 8 as well. And say after 0. Let me run this code. I'm not sure why this executed. It shouldn't be. Because a compiled type language is a language where nothing executes before all the errors are resolved. Nothing executes. Okay, let me say system.a and let me just print a and see this time. You see, that was a runtime error. That's why it executed line number 6. But if we talk about a compile time error, this time you say nothing executed, not even line number 6. Why? It said that, hey, I got this error. I cannot find this symbol. What is this? And XYZ. Please go and resolve this. So unless or until I'll resolve all the errors in this, I would not be allowed to perform any operation. So a compile type language is nothing but a language where all the errors has to be resolved beforehand, before compiling the code in the compile time, and then we execute it actually. Okay. Another example of a compile type language is C, C++, both of them. C sharp. All of these comes under compile type language. Okay. Is it clear to everybody till here? Yes, no, maybe.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Good to hear. The Zoom meeting is sometimes so irritating. It closes your chats, it closes your list of participants. You need to again open and recheck everything. Set it up. Okay. So we understood about this. Let's say another example out here. When I compare these two languages, if somebody comes you towards an interview, allows you a time of 10 minutes and says, hey, just create a basic calculator for us to add two numbers. A Python person would do it in the next 20 to 30 seconds. But when you compare it with other programming languages, you need to think multiple times, a dozen of times before writing your code. You guys can clearly compare that creating a simple calculator. Now, again, I would like to acknowledge back, I would like to loop back to the very first line which I said when we started the demo. Out of us here in this meeting, tell me honestly, when I say create a simple calculator by adding two numbers, how many of you are very much clear in your mind how to do it? The logic was clear to all of you, right? I need to take one number, I need to take another number. I just need to, plus make an addition operation and print the result. Correct? That was very much clear to all of us, right? That how do we need to do it? But when it comes towards the execution, when it comes towards the execution, that how to write it, we all were taking a step back. And we all suffered at a point of time in our careers that how to write it. Now, when I say write the same code in Java, I don't know what scanner is. I don't know what is double. Why do we use what is this public static void main? Why do we need that? All these things. That is where the difference comes in. Python says you know how to solve the logic. Welcome. I'll be happy to help you. Write it very easily. 4 lines of code that are done. Java says you know how to do it. Let me make it more complex. Come to me. No, I'm not roasting Java at all. Okay, it's a very good language and I love Java. But the point what I want to explain you guys here is that Python is more towards logic oriented as compared to syntax oriented. Is that point clear to everybody?
Yes.
Good to know. Okay, let's move towards the next property where Python is also, have its dimensions. We say Python is object oriented. Now we all have heard about this term object oriented programming, object oriented, blah, 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 multiple times in our heads, a dozen of times in our heads, right? Encapsulation, abstraction, and whatnot, inheritance, polymorphism, and all these terms starts coming up your mind when you start even reading about object-oriented programming. But what is object-oriented programming? And multiple people say that Java is a complete 100% purely object-oriented programming. Python is not. Disagreed. Java is also not 100% purely object-oriented. We have wrapper classes around it, which skips the object-oriented mechanism, and that's a long process to go and dig up to. But let's stick to our point about Python. Python over here is a language which is a general purpose language. When I say a general, okay, before we jump even to general purpose object-oriented, let me come back towards the same code. What is the very first difference you guys can see in the coding way? In the coding way of these two languages? Tell me. syntax one. Second is, have you seen this
There's
starting?
a class in Java.
Correct. Without class, you cannot do anything in Java. You have to start with the class. You have to do everything within inside a class. Now, what is a class? What is an object? All these things comes later in the session. Be tuned. But have you seen this here? No. But does it mean it does not support class? Class, cars. No, it do supports class as well. That is why we say that Python is more towards a general purpose language where in a single file, I can write simple code, I can write classes, I can write, if I come outside and I want to write a function, that is also doable. All these three things can be done in a single .py file. That is why we name it as a general purpose language. But if I try to perform the same thing outside the class in Java, I'll say int a equals to 0. Will it work? For sure, it will give me error at line number 1. Int a equals to 0, there is an error. Why? Because it only and only allows everything to be defined inside a class and executed within the class. That is the difference when we say Python is more towards a general purpose language. And hence it do supports Python, object-oriented language as well. Object-oriented programming language as well. Just allow me a minute, guys. I'll be back. Just a minute. Yeah. Sorry. I was having a glass of water actually. So, coming back towards object-oriented programming, I'd say that it supports object-oriented programming. As I said, I'm giving an example over there. You clearly see that there's a class. We are supporting the syntax of writing a class is very much simple as compared to writing it in the other programming languages. We'll come towards this complex topics towards the end of the Python. So I'll skip it here. Another important property and a very, very important property which makes your life 100x easier is the dynamic typing. As a beginner, when I say, just a second, guys. Yeah, sorry. So as a beginner, when we start in any other programming language, we are very much confused to understand that I want to write 10, then I'll say, let's say this example. I say that I want to write XYZ or I want to write a number to add, how do I do it? You can clearly see the difference out here, what I want to explain here, but I don't know why my marker is not opening up. Okay. Yeah. Okay. You can clearly see the difference over here. What I want to say. You're writing x equals to 5. You're also writing the same thing, x equals to 5. But what is the difference? This is the difference, right? When I say this, it means that you need to define the type of the variable every time. You need to define the type of the variable every time you are writing any number. Now I write 5. I need to tell, okay, it is an integer type. I write 3.2. I need to mention, okay, this is a double type of an value. All this information has to be given prior to execute a code in any other programming language like Java. But when you compare it with Python, Python deals with it at the runtime itself. Python says, okay, give me the value, I'll figure it out what type of value it is automatically on my own and artificial intelligence. You give me 5, I'll say it's an integer. You give me 3.2, I'll say it's a floating point number. Let's take a live example of what I want to explain here. Let me exit it out, go to compiler. Okay. I'll say A equals to 10, B equals to Ashish, C equals to 3.21. I want to understand that what type of the values are these. So I'll say print. I'll just give a simple function and say I want to print me the type of the variable A, print me the type of the variable B, and print me the type of the variable C. Simple. I am nowhere giving it any information prior that, hey, what type of the variable it is. And that is why it makes your life easier and more logic oriented. Otherwise, you always figure out, oh, what type of variable should I define here? What type of data type should I define here? Should I define the data type as an object of which class? So many questions in your head goes on. I'll run it. You see, it is automatically identifying that, hey, A is an integer, B is a string. String means the collection of characters, and C is a floating point number. Float means a division, a dividing number, any number with with decimal in it, decimal numbers you can say. When you compare it with any other programming like Java, over here also, if I'll just say A equals to 10, let's say, and I'll just simply print A. If I run it, it gives me an error right away saying that I do not know what is this A. First of all, tell me what is this A. If I write, okay, I'll let you know that it's an integer, and now I run it, this code should work flawlessly, right? So now this has sort of identifying yourself beforehand that what type of variable are you are you going to define, or there are situations comes in your coding where you are also not sure that what type of the value you are going to receive from the previous executed statements. So you want to pass the result of the previous executed statements to some other statements, and you're not sure that what type of data are you going to receive at these types of time. You are not sure about the data type as well. So here your life becomes more complex, figuring out what type of data you need to put out to so that it can be used in Java. But here, no matter you declare a variable directly and put the value, and Python will automatically understand at the time of compiling, at the time of runtime, that what type of value is it supporting. That is why we say it's more towards a dynamically typed language. Is it clear to everybody till here? Yes, no, maybe. So you guys are getting bored, I believe, yes? That is why I'm not seeing all the results. We are saying a regular demo. We see this multiple times. Okay, cool. No issues. Let's move towards another property, which is there. We say exception handling. Python has a very great way of handling the exception, raising the exceptions. You can do the same. You have a try except block. Try catch block is another name in other programming languages, but here you call it as try except. We'll come to it when we deal with exception handling. At the end, we say it's a high level language. If you want to perform anything, you just be sure about how logic you want to apply, it will do it for you automatically. For example, if you want to find the squares of the numbers from all starting from 1 to 10, you need to write at least 11 or 12 lines of code in Java as compared you need to write one single line of code in Python. You simply say for all the numbers in 1 to 10, print me the square root. So it works like simple that hey, for numbers in 1 to 10, print me the square root, and it does it. Ta-da. So that is where it makes your life easier and happier. Till now, we understood about the properties of Python, the comparison between Python and Java. I believe anybody who is just starting their careers towards programming language are now pretty much clear that why they selected Python or they want to still go with other languages. Okay, just kidding. Now let's try to understand how are we going to actually install Python. When we will be starting the session, maybe next week, I believe, from the upcoming first week of May. I will be taking up the session from here again, that how are we going to install different versions of Python and the IDE so that each and every one of us to be on the same page. Right. Scroll it a bit down. So to work with Python, you have to you go to the official website of Python, which is python.org. When you go to this official website, over here, you will see that latest version of the Python is 3.12.3. That is the latest version of Python in the market. And it's an open source language, so you can always go and help development towards the next version. Completely fine. You can simply click on download 3.12.3 if you want to, go with some prior versions. Sorry. You can always scroll down and see all of the versions listed from 3.12 and so on, and there will be multiple older releases as well. At a point of time, this is heard in the market that Python 3.8 is the most stable release of Python till date. That it was extremely stable, it was extremely wonderful release, and we'll figure out how 3.12 works for us. And yeah, that is it. You need to go and simply click on download Python, save it somewhere in your system. Since I'm using a Mac machine, so it gives me a DMG file. So I already have it pre-installed with me, so I'll not reinstall it again. So for you, just click on Python. There would be a pop-up opening up. The pop-up simply asks you for some XYZ information. You need to fill it out. Go to the official website, figure out download button. It's completed. Double click to install the file. Now, while you install Python, there is a pop-up and a checkbox comes as saying add Python to path. This is a very important checkbox to be selected. Select this checkbox and your path will be automatic. Environment variables will be automatically set up. You do not need to go to my computers, write that weird syntax of path equals to whatever x y z. It handles all these things automatically on its own. So you can do that. It takes a couple of minutes for the installation to happen, and once it is completed, you can verify it with your terminal. Open your terminal or your console. Simply write Python version If I'm not wrong, it's okay. Python version, no. If I simply write Python, no. Um, how do we start it? I am forgetting the command. Mm, 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 mm. I believe it should read this command. Just allow me a minute. Single V, I don't think that is the issue out here, is it? No, forget about it. I'll check it out here. Terminal, Python. Yeah, I believe that is a pretty old terminal. I need to close it and relaunch it. So over here, you see the minute I write Python, it says I have 3.10.7 installed with me, and it opens with an internal Python interpreter to work upon. Okay, we'll come to it. Another very important thing which we need towards here is the IDE, integrated development environment, over where we will be using it to code all the items. So the IDE which we are going to use here is called PyCharm. It's a JetBrains IDE. It offers you two different versions. The first version is the professional edition, and the other version is the community edition. You have to go with the community edition because this is free to use. The professional edition is a paid edition. So we have to go ahead and use the PyCharm community edition. So now whatever the machine you are using, you can double click and install it for that respective machine. If you're a Linux user, go with tar.gz. If you are a Windows user, you can always go with, exe files, Windows exe files. And if you are a Mac OS user, you can go with the DMG files. If you want to use some previous machines, you can always, previous versions, you can always scroll down and check it out as well. Okay. So you need to install PyCharm and Python in your machines before we get started. Okay. Now, is it clear to everybody till now? Yes, no, maybe.
Yes.
All of you. How many of you are already bored? So many yeses. So you guys are bored? Abhinav, Vishal, Shashi. Can we use VS Code as well? Definitely you can use VS Code as well. Definitely you can use Eclipse as well. But you need to install separate packages around it so that these IDEs can support Python for them. But I would again recommend you to use PyCharm because it makes your life easy when you deal with Python. It comes up with internal multiple types of support as well. Yeah. Now, another very, very important item in terms of Python and using Python is the virtual environment. That is a very, very important concept which has to be crystal clear in your minds so that you can understand the most important and the reason why we should support Python going ahead. I have created a very basic example for you guys to understand it. Let's start. There's a garden. Okay. Now I own a farm. I'll not say a garden. I'll say I own a farm. I have distributed my farm in two different halves. And I want in these two different halves to grow some two different types of flowers. The first type of the farm I want is the roses. Other part I want to grow some sunflowers. But I have only one single area over with me, and that is pretty much open area. We all know that when we talk about roses, the requirement is simple. To grow roses, you need more sunlight and you need more water. These are the properties which are required to grow roses in the area, in this environment. On the other hand, when I say sunflowers, it needs less water and more shade to grow up. Understood? These are two different requirements, completely opposite to each other. But again, the challenge here is to grow both of them in a single farm. That is, sorry, that is a challenge which we are going to face out here, right? One side needs a different set of properties, other side needs a different set of properties. How are we going to deal with this situation? Just allow me a minute, guys. Yeah, sorry, guys. So, yeah, that was the requirement when I said. Now, let's try to link it with a different example. For example, you have a machine and you want to run two different types of projects into it. One project works on a different version of Selenium, let's say Selenium 1. Another project works on the latest version of Selenium, let's say Selenium 4. Now, you need to keep both the projects in your system and run them separately whenever is needed. For example, now the bottleneck here is that you can install one version of Selenium at a point of time in your system, right? Either you can install Selenium 1, either you can install Selenium 4, but you cannot have both of them at the same time at the global level, right? To resolve this issue, let me just come back and make it open. Let's say this was my system 1, this was my system 2, this needed Selenium 1, and let's say Python 3.2. This needed Selenium 4, Python 3.12. Not 1.2, 3.2, let's say 3.3, 3.8, let's say, for example, whatever you can say. Now, these both of them has to be in the same machine. The bottleneck, what is the bottleneck here? The bottleneck here is that either you can install this either you can install this at a point, either you can install this at a point. How do we have both of them? How do we have both of them together in the same machine? That was the question. To resolve this, we have something called virtual environment. We have something called virtual environment. Python says that no issues. If you want to do this, I'll create you a separate virtual environment 1. In this virtual environment, only and only these properties will be supported. Now, whenever, I'll repeat, just a second. Now, whenever you want to, work in this environment, simply go and activate this environment. Simply go and activate virtual environment 1. And whenever you want to work in the other environment, which is this, whenever you want to run a different project, let's say VENV2, for every project, we are creating a separate VENV. That is the catch here, actually. Whenever you want to, execute the different environment, just go and execute and activate the other one. With this approach, you can actually have two different sets of configuration in the same machine. For example, I'll show it to you. Let me clear out the where it happened on drawings. So this is the pie chart. In this pie chart, you see I have a VENV already created, right? In this VENV, whatever I want to install, I will be installing for this project inside this virtual environment only. It will not be installed outside this project. The scope of the libraries will be only and only limited towards this simple project. That's it. If I create another project, another virtual environment is created, and whatever libraries I will install there will be only limited to that specific project, which means that I cannot use a library of project 1 in project 2, which helps us with the global issue that if I have Selenium 1, I cannot run the project Selenium 4. If I have Selenium, 4, I cannot run the project with Selenium 1. So that bottleneck is completely resolved with this VENV type of setup. Is it clear to everybody till here? Yes, no, maybe. Okay. I hope it is clear to everybody till here. Yes, no, I received a very
Yes.
response. All of us things are boring now. Huh. Okay. Can this be done on any other IDE also? It is not IDE specific, Shivani. This is programming language specific. Python supports virtual environment. PyCharm does not. So it's a property of PyCharm with that it supports virtual environment, but it's not a property of it's a property of Python, I'm sorry, that it supports virtual environment, not PyCharm. Okay. Okay. So I believe
Can we use Visual Code also in a?
yeah, as I said, you can definitely use Visual Code, Visual Studio, Eclipse, IntelliJ, but you need to install separate plugins to support Python in them. That
Okay.
is why I say that PyCharm is mostly used in framework in the market, and it is having extreme support towards Python as well. You see, there is a separate Python console, Python packages. We'll come to it. We'll learn about them later, but it's very, very better as compared to other IDEs. Okay.
Okay, fine.
I believe that's we any questions, any type of questions. Okay, let me talk about the syllabus which we are going to complete in the upcoming times. We will be learning about three types of frameworks: a data-driven framework. We are going to learn about page object models. We are going to learn about yeah, page object, data-driven, and a hybrid framework for sure. Along with it, we will be also learning a testing framework which is called PyTest. PyTest is a very, very extremely and a widely used framework in the market, and it is very much comparable and competitive to TestNG framework, which is already existing to support Java as a testing language. We'll be learning Selenium. We'll be learning about different types of components into it. We'll be taking up a live project into the similar domain. Just allow me a second, guys. Just
What is the difference between the Selenium 4 and Selenium 3x?
sorry.
Selenium 3 and Selenium 4.
Need to go through documentations. They have made some changes towards the grid, the usage of grid. How do we do that? So there are some modifications, and actually the next release is more kind of a bug fix towards the previous one. So I'll come to the details of Selenium when we start the Selenium session. Once we complete the Python basics to advanced, and we'll go with Selenium. Okay. Um,
Okay.
are we covering APM? APM would be a separate topic when we are done with Python as well as Selenium. We'll be starting towards the APM session. Okay. We are going to have 1.5 hour sessions on the weekends. It will be 1 hour 30 minutes. The timings would be 8 a.m. IST to 9:30 a.m. IST on each day. On like the same time in the mornings
Day
and
or weekend?
weekends.
Okay.
Saturdays and Sundays. Okay. So I believe most of you would be interested in joining the session, or you will be skipping a leg. I see. So there is a lot to learn. There's a lot to understand. It's all come back to practice. I'll be sharing you all the codes on the GitHub repository. Need your GitHub accounts when we start the session. The session will be starting the upcoming week itself, which is, let me check, 4th of May. We're gonna kickstart it with 4th May and 5th of May would be our very first batch of Selenium in Python. We're going to start with Selenium, Python basics, variables, then data structures, where it comes list, tuples, dictionaries, and so on. We'll be learning about exception handling, logging, reporting. Reporting is a lieu reporting, which is supported. Then, if time allows, we'll be understanding that how do we connect this with Jenkins as well. If you want to run a pipeline in Jenkins, how do we do that? So that is also one of the topic which is scheduled this time. So there's a lot upcoming. It all depends upon the level of energy that you guys are going to show to me, and the same from me as well. But the only rule here is that be interactive, ask your questions straightforward, and I believe that's it. Anyone having any more questions to ask? Any feedbacks you guys wants to give? Was it a good session? Was it a bad session? Was it interesting? Boring? Interesting, thank you. Is it possible to have both Java and Python? Definitely, you can have as many programming languages as much you want. Interesting, great session. Looking forward. Definitely, I'm also too much excited to have started again with the same enthusiasm in the upcoming week. Okay, then I believe that's all for the day. We'll be starting up with the other items maybe next week soon. Feel free to contact Rahul in case of any questions. He would be happy to answer you. You will be getting the recorded sessions in case if you skip some of them. You can always go and check it out outside. Okay. Yeah, I believe that's all for the day then. If no more questions, we can make it a wrap. Tomorrow, no session, no. Tomorrow is Monday, my dear. So only Saturdays and Sundays, 8 a.m. IST to 9:30 a.m. IST. Thank you so much. It was a nice session. Definitely, it was lovely to meet you guys. Okay, then, guys. 8 a.m. 8, not 8:30, it's 8 a.m. IST to 9:30 a.m. IST. Okay then guys, stay safe. Bye-bye. Have a great week ahead.